Hi, and welcome back. We're in part 3 of this series. We're looking at a deep dive into margins and paddings. We've looked at all the weird behaviors and how they work and all of that. And now I want to look at how you can use them effectively to make a better looking design. White space, which is pretty much empty space in the design world, is one of the most important concepts on making a design go from, yeah, that looks okay, to, wow, look at that really awesome design. And a lot of people don't leverage it the right way. I see a lot of, especially developers, but even designers who don't really push it enough and don't create a nice balance between it. So what this video is, we're going to be building a little e-commerce type card pop-up thing that you might get for a checkout. And while I'm going to be building the whole thing from scratch, so we're going to get into the whole coding thing, I'm going to put more emphasis on the margins and padding and how I'm using them and the thinking that's going on behind creating the white space and why I want more space here and less space there. And along the way, which one am I using? Am I using margin or am I using padding? So let's go see how we can make our websites really shine. Okay, so here we are in CodePen like usual. I will be sharing this with you guys in the link. The description will be down below, so you can follow that or go check that out once this is all done. So basically, we're going to make a pretty simple card here. It's like an e-commerce style card. So let's go take a look. We're going to do a div class of card. We'll close that off, close div. And now I'm going to be using the BEM style of naming. It's something I want to be trying to do a little bit. My naming conventions I haven't been too happy with, and I don't like necessarily the double underscore. If you're not familiar with the BEM naming conventions, I'll put a link to that in the description below as well, where you can check it out a little bit more. So I have my div class card, and then we're going to have inside of there a div class of, what are we going to call it? It's going to be for my image, so I guess it will be card image. So basically it's just anything that's inside my card gets the double underscore, and it's just to say that this is going to be part of this. You know, it's something that belongs inside of my card. Cool. And I'm wondering if I should call that image container instead of image, because this isn't the image itself. Image container. And then in here we'll have my actual image. So I'm just going to do it the fast way there, and we're just going to use an unsplash filler something image. So I can do it like this and just put on splash it. I don't know exactly how big we need, so I'm just going to throw that in there for now, and we should see, there we go. That's about the size I want. Whatever, we don't need a description at the moment. Okay, so we have an image that's going to be at the top of our card, and then we have the content, the actual regular content. So we'll do a div class equals, and we'll call this card content because it's the content of the card, and we'll close that div off. So inside of here, we have a few different things. I'm going to have an h2, and I'm going to name pretty much everything. I should actually name my image up there too, where this will be my title, card title. And we'll just call it like a cool product or something like that, and close H2. Then we will have a few paragraphs. So our first paragraph is P class. The first one will be our subtitle. So it would be just card subtitle. And I don't know, a cool product that you should buy. Close paragraph. Nice and simple. Then we need to do in a paragraph class, and we're going to have a little description of the product. So card description. For this, I just have a little bit of lorem ipsum saved off screen, so we can have a few well, not a few paragraphs, but a few lines of text, because I think that would, I don't feel like writing a big long thing. So we'll paste that in. Great. Move this down a little bit, scroll that, there we go. That looks a little better. Next we need our price. So once again, we'll have a paragraph for our price. So to be, you can guess what this one's going to be. Price. And it's going to be an expensive one. Let's make it a nice big one, $399.99. Close paragraph, and this should have an equals right there. And at the very end, a buy now link. So we'll do a
href is equal to nothing, and the class on this one can be card button by now. Close A. And I think that's all we need. And it looks pretty good. Okay, so another thing we're going to do is I am going to import Merriweather in here, just because it's a nice little font. It's Merriweather Sans that I'm going to use, so I'm going to import that in. And we'll set that up on my body. So body, we can say that the font family will be Merriweather Sans. It's just a Google font. Sans, sans serif. And just since we're only doing this, I'm going to give it like a padding of 50 pixels. Just to create some space so my card's not stuck to the edge of the screen. But normally I wouldn't have this on my body. Okay, so now we can really get started. Now, one thing I said I do like to do, and I recommended in the last video, especially if you're not sure about with the collapsing margins and all of that stuff, one thing that can be really useful is just doing a general reset. So we're going to use that reset. So we're going to say on here, our padding is 0, our margin is 0, and our box sizing is border box. So it always, whenever you do this, will make your layout look less good automatically because everything gets stuck together. So sometimes you do this and you're like, oh man, now I have so much more work to do, but it can create less work in the long run. Just because you can really be focused just on setting things up exactly how you want to. Cool. So on the card itself, we'll start there. And we'll do, let's just give it a width of like 600 pixels. And so we can actually see it. I don't want to give it a background color, but we'll give it a box shadow. So I'll do 0, 0, 15 pixels. And I want it to be black, so we'll do RGBA, because black itself is really dark. 0, 0, 0. And we'll try 0.25 just to fade it out. There we go. Just a really nice subtle drop shadow. I find even if you go up to like 50 or 75 and the shadow is really obvious, it's not going to look so good. So I'm going to drop that down to like 25, nice and subtle. You could even probably drop it down to 20. Something really, really subtle. Drop shadows in general, the more subtle they are, the nicer they look. Good, and I'm just wondering if I should do display flex. I think, yeah, we're going to also on here do a display flex, so it's going to get the two things to go next to each other, like that. So that, yeah, that's more or less what I want. This one's a little bigger than I want. I want this one to be smaller. I have a feeling we're going to have to tweak a little bit of stuff in here as we go, just because of the way I'm setting this up. But I'm just going to come, the way on Splash It works, it's using filler images. You have the width and the height. I'm just going to make the width a little smaller because I want it to be, yeah, more like that. Sweet. Good. I didn't want it to be like this really big image or anything like that. I want it to be something maybe a little bigger than that could be good, but we'll fine tune it a little bit near the end. So that's good. Now, the problem is, and we're going to start by looking at the text here, and all the text is crammed, and obviously we have this big empty space at the bottom. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to move things off of the edges. And the biggest mistake I see people make is they take their card content, because they know they need to move stuff off, and they do something like this. Padding 50 pixels to create the space. And yeah, okay. They created some space. That's fine. It's not terrible. And even actually, I see a lot of people do it like this, 10. And it's like, yeah, you moved it off the sides. That's good. It is easier to read than when it was jammed on there, but it's still not really that nice. If you're going to add padding for something that's this big and we have all this room to work with, add a lot of padding. So I'm looking at this like I want to bring emphasis on this. Now, you're definitely reading this, but you have this big block and it's sort of stuck near the top. In general, and it becomes more of an aesthetic thing, but it's one of the design things you want is to use spacing or proximity. So things that are close to one another and far away from each other to create hierarchy in the text and how people are going to go through it to read all of the content. So on the card content here, instead of doing something really small like this, I make it bigger. Bring the text down a little bit. So let's start with that. So instead of just doing something like 10 pixels or even 50 pixels, which is a huge improvement, That's cool. And if you make them, if I did margin on here, it would look the same. I don't have a color on my background, so it's not the end of the world. The reason I'm using padding instead of margin is because I'm looking at, like, I'm pushing the content into my box. So margin is really pushing things away. So, but if you made the mistake and you're not sure and you're working on your design, it's really not the end of the world. Or if I did have a background color on this, say it was a background of yellow or something like that for some reason, and I did my margin, I go, oh, whoops, that's the wrong one. I can just switch it out for the padding. If you don't have a background color on it, it's really not the end of the world. But just remember, in general, pushing content inwards is going to be done with padding, and pushing things away from each other is with margins. So let's keep my padding there, but we're going to make it a lot bigger. So I'm going to go with something in the range. I'm going to like even double this. But if I do 100 pixels like that, this starts getting kind of small. Like I don't have a lot of room to work with now. My content's getting really crowded. So I think I like having a lot of space on the top, but for the space around it now, I'd rather go with something a little bit smaller. So maybe something in the range of like 40 pixels. So if we remember, the first one is going to be on the top and the bottom, and the second one is on the left and the right. So I have 40 pixels there and there. One thing I would encourage is trying to keep that type of spacing equal. So you could play with that. Maybe it's 50, maybe 35, but I want a nice healthy space here because I want to separate my image from this. And by pushing it off the top, it just makes it a lot easier to, like, my eye gets drawn to this a little more than when it's glued up near the top like that. So now we can make, we have to make our stuff look a little better, right? So we'll do card title. And in this case, I want to make sure it looks already like the bold weight, but font weight of 800 is the big heavy one. It already is that, but we'll lighten it up a little bit just to make it, when you use pure black, it's a little too black. So we want to just make it a little bit darker, lighter, I should say. Pure black, I try to avoid pure black. Dark grays are usually a bit better. And we'll go with a font size of, let's do like 35 pixels. Yeah, it looks okay. Now you'll see the problem here that's already starting is the B here is starting to merge, or like they're touching. So they're a little too close together, but I'm going to come on my subtitle, card subtitle. And on here, let's set up a font size on this one too. Font size, it actually looks pretty good. Let's say like 20 pixels. Font weight, let's make this one nice and bold as well. I want to make this all cap actually, so maybe it should be smaller, maybe like 15 pixels. Text transform uppercase. If ever you do this, and it's sort of the same concept as margins and paddings, but it's a lot more of a subtle little thing. If ever you do uppercase text like this, and I'm actually going to make this a little smaller. Let's go like 12. If ever you do pure uppercase text like that, 14 maybe, try some letter spacing on there. Letter spacing. I'm not going to put a lot of letter spacing on here, but I think a little bit of letter spacing, like 1 pixel, might even just, it makes it a little bit easier to read. All cap bold text can be a little hard to read. So just by doing that little spacing thing, it can really help out. And we should also change the color. And I want a bright green, so I'm just going to try lime green and hope it works. There we go. So I think that looks okay, but the spacing of it is really bad now. So already hierarchy-wise, I can see this is the title, the subtitle, text. Well, the prices sort of looks like text, and I definitely see the little buy now thing. So it's coming together, but just to show you what you can do. So these I want to separate just because they're touching. The only reason. So I just want to pull those apart a little bit. So let's give this a margin bottom. I don't even know. 10 pixels might be too much. It is too much. Should I uppercase the title? We'll leave it lowercase. But that's too big. Let's do it like 5 pixels. There we go, pulling them together. Anyone who's watched my other stuff knows I usually work with M's and Rems, but I don't want to have that as a focal point for this. I just want to stick with pixels, just so I can really focus and not have to worry about explaining that as well. So there we go. I want them nice and close together, and I want to separate them now from this, because this is one sort of piece of information. Title, subtitle, one piece of information. Then we're going to have this as a piece of information, another one, and another one. So now after this one, so I go to my subtitle. Remember, I like trying to work with margin bottom as much as possible when I'm creating separations between things. So on here, we can go with something pretty big. Let's say like 50 pixels. So it just creates this nice big separation. So now I see this. Like this has become the emphasis. This is what I'm really, really looking at. Then my eye, after I see this, can jump down to this area. So I have a really big space, nice big breathing room. And the whole point of this is to create a lot of nice, really big breathing room around here. And if you're wondering about like margins and paddings, we're really going to get into more finer details when we get into our button as well on why we're using one or the other, because that's going to have a background color on it. So that just creates this nice big empty space here. Then I have my text. My text, let's play around with that a little bit since we're here. So my card description, I think I called it, right? Did I actually write description? I did. I don't like, that's too long. Let's go with card description, like that. Just because I'm lazy and don't like typing as much. And let's make it a little smaller. Font size. Usually I like big font sizes on stuff. 16 is usually the default. So I'm going to go with like a 14. For something like this, I don't mind it being a bit smaller. But most of the time, I'm trying to go for larger font sizes just because I find it is kind of small. If this was a lot of text, I don't know. I like larger font sizes. One way to make text much easier to read, and it still goes with this whole concept of white space, is increase the space between your lines, which we can do with our line height. So the default is, I forget what it is, 1.4? Not even, 1.3. If I comment that out. 1.2 then maybe is the default. It's in that range. It's even smaller than that, which is really, really tight. You know, I usually do 1.6 as my starting point, and then I'll modify from there. If this was a lot of text, that's looking pretty good, but I'm going for something really airy and spaced out. This is pushing it. 1.6 is sort of my default. 1.4 to 1.6 is usually nice for long bits of text. But for something like this, I think that looks nice just because we're going for something elegant, which is usually a little bit more spacey, and we don't have a lot of text to read. If you start spacing out the text too much and it starts getting like double spaced, it doesn't always look so nice. So that looks pretty good. We should change the color again. I don't like pure black, so color, and I'm going to lighten this up quite a bit. Probably too much right there. Maybe a 777 or something like that. You want to, even though you're going for that elegant, nice look, you don't want to make it too light because you do want to make sure people can read it. Not everyone has as good as eyes as you do. And now we need some space underneath that. So let's give that some space under. So again, margin bottom. How much do we want? I don't know. I'm just randomly guessing numbers. Maybe I should space it out equally. I did a 50, so let's just use a 50 again. So we can have equal spacing. I'm not sure, but I'll stick with that for now. Now, one problem we've run into is our card is getting taller than our image, and we'll look at fixing that after without adapting just the image's height. So now we want to get into the actual price. So once again, we can come on to here and do a card price. And so we want to make it bigger. So, you know, I'm looking at this, I see this, I have a description, but I do want people, like, it should be like, boom, buy now. I want people to buy it. And we want, you know, hopefully this looks like a good deal. It's expensive, but, you know, it's for something good at that price. So let's make it bigger. Font size is, I don't know, 35 pixels. Should we make it bold? We'll keep the color dark on this one. Well, we should, I'm going to match the title. Just so this color and this color are the same. I think I do want it bold. So we'll do a font weight on there of 800. There we go. That looks a little bit more. I like that a bit. I'm going to reduce this space actually. In like half maybe. I'm just playing around a little bit with it. Maybe it was okay at 50. Let's wait until I have my button done and come back maybe. Okay, so that's looking pretty nice. That's all we really need. So again, people see this. we want to see like what's the order they're going in. We sort of want them to be like they are, they clicked on it, they're getting more information, but we sort of want them to buy it at this point. So we're putting a description that gives them a little bit more information, but here's the price and buy it. So especially my card button, I want this baby to stand out. So first thing I'm gonna do is give it a background of lime green. A color, I don't know if white or black is gonna work better. Probably black. Text decoration of none. Good. Now one thing that's interesting is if I give this padding, I'll just do padding like 50 pixels for now. You're gonna get this weird thing where it covers other things around it, which is not a normal behavior. But it's because I put this on, where is it? A link. And a link is an inline element. So you can add padding to inline elements, you'll see it, but it doesn't move the object like you'd expect it to. It doesn't actually add to the size of it. It's just like this visual thing that causes problems. And just to show you, if we do it with margin, so margin top of like 100 pixels, nothing happens because it's an inline element. It thinks it's going to be a link that's like in your text here. And imagine if you had a link in here that had a margin on it, that's going to cause all sorts of problems. So whenever you have a link that you want to turn into a button, one thing that's really important is you do display inline block. And now it's going to behave like you want. My margin top is working. I don't want it to actually have this. I want it to have some padding. So I'm putting padding on it because it has a background color. Anytime something has a background color, you have to give it padding. Solid rule, right there, go. Now, once again, don't do it like 10 pixels. It's a good start, but it's not enough. So it's getting there. It looks a little better already. The reason you have to give something with a background color padding is because you need the text not to touch the side of it. The second text is touching the side of things, it looks really bad. And again, I get people who like doing this where it's like 5. That's a pretty sad button. Don't do it. And it's the same here. Don't do a 5 pixel space. Make a substantial space. Make it so the space is obvious. So on my price now, I didn't add my margin, but I think I should. So let's add a margin bottom of, I don't know, 10 pixels. Maybe it should be bigger than that. It'll be like 25. Just to push that away. And now, before, because this wasn't inline block, the padding wasn't moving it. But now, if I add padding top of like 100 pixels, I'll take this one off. That will actually, it will impact how the button's doing. It won't overlap stuff anymore. So that's, why we were doing the inline block stuff. Now, with the padding, on something like a button, you want it to be different on the top and bottom and left and right. Because say I just do 50 pixels like this. It sort of works, but it's a weird shape and it's way too big. So way too big is to start with, so 25. So I sort of like the spacing on the left and the right, but it's still this weird, awkward shape now. It's way too tall. You'd never really find a button like this. So if you really want to make sure your button is you go and look at what nice buttons look like. But in general, the padding on the top and bottom is going to be like half-ish of what it is on the left and the right. So instead of breaking it all up, I'm just going to do what we were looking at. So say I went with 25 on the right and the left. I could on here add in on the top and the bottom could be like 10 pixels. And you start getting a bit nicer of a shape. And that's a little small, so we'll do like 13 maybe. And again, it's a general rule of thumb, but like double on the sides than what you have on the top and the bottom. And usually it starts looking pretty decent. So I'm actually pretty happy with that. We might as well add a little bit of a hover on that as well. Card, button, hover. And we'll just change the background to green, color to white. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I don't even like that really, but anyway, it works for now. Yeah, okay. So we obviously have this big issue of this big space on the bottom. And the reason we got that space is as we spaced out our content here, this card got longer and longer. So this big empty area on the bottom is coming from the padding that we put on here. So remember we created a big padding there and a big padding here. So another thing I see people do is they go, oh, it got too big. And do I really need that padding on the bottom? or they'll start playing with their paddings and stuff like that. So here, that's top, right, left. I can do 0 and put 0 on the bottom, and hey, now it's all crowded down on the bottom. I'd say it's more important for something like this to be nice and airy on the top than nice and airy on the bottom, but it's still nice to have it nice and airy on the bottom. It really helps you keep the focus of everything. I'm looking here, I see the buy now jumping off the page, it drags my eye down, and I come to this. And there's a super clear hierarchy of information. I've broken everything down into bits. So I use padding to create this nice big space around. I'm using margin after all my text pieces just to break them apart. And then I'm using padding again to create something like a button like this that has a background on it. So background has padding, spacing, just general spacing is with margins. Now we could fix this image thing in a few different ways. So what I could do is I have my card. I never did card image. So my card image, we're going to do something on that, but I also want to select the image inside my card. I didn't call it image, I added to it image container, right? Good. Image container. I think I should do something with that, but I want to actually get the image. So I'm going to give the image a class too. Class equals card. I'll just say image. I know this isn't exact BIM naming convention, but card, we'll just do image like this. It's a little strange that, anyway, it's fine. So my card image, I want to give it a min height of 100%. Now the problem with doing that is now it's overlapping this other content. So all my empty space went away because it's overflowing out the side here. But it means that no matter what happens with my content, the image will fit. I'm just going to go on the container now, and I'm going to say overflow hidden. And now it's not hiding, so the container can grow and shrink. The only problem is this has gotten kind of small. This looks really tiny, and this is really big, and you might want a bigger image than that. Will this work? Flex of 1. Flex of 2. That is bigger, right? Yeah, it made it a little bigger. So basically this is just saying try and be about, take up 2 parts and take up 1 part. It's not exactly how that works, but it sort of makes sure that we have it taking up a decent amount of space.
And there we have it, guys. We're all wrapped up. There's margins and paddings covered, I think. Hopefully I didn't miss anything along the way. If I did, please leave a comment down below and let me know about it. If you like this little mini-series, please let me also know. If you want more in-depth sort of breakdowns of core concepts, let me know about it, and maybe we can explore some more in the coming weeks and months and all of that stuff. If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. I make content like this every single week where we explore how to make the web and how to make it look better while we're at it. One last big shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys for making this all possible. If you'd like to support this channel in another way, go check out the link down below to see how you can support me on Patreon as well. And until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.